gonna have a party. We're gonna have a Donner party.
Oh no! I'll bring the ham hocks if you bring the chicken strips.
I'll bring the children. Put them in the pot.
The children?
The children.
Oh yes, fresh, yummy babies.
And the wives and the oxen.
Mm-hmm. The oxen, you got it, you know.
All the above.
Oregon Trail, that shit, of course.
So, if it's not clear, we're talking about the Donner Party today.
Mm-hmm.
They are a group of people that I've been obsessed with over the past few months.
Yep. I've heard things.
I started listening to a group called American Murder Song. They had an entire album dedicated to the Donner Party, and that is how I was introduced to them. Before I mentioned them at all, did you know about them at all?
I have heard about the Donner Party. I've seen a few movies that kind of they'll draw their inspiration from the Donner Party. Of course, Ravenous. I don't know if it's on Netflix or not, but it's an older movie, and there's definitely elements of Donner Party in there. Of course, Alive can harken back to Donner Party. But, I mean, I guess if you're in squalor like that, then you kind of have to resort to doing what the Donner Party did.
Well, there is one guy that has an air of mystery about him from the whole Donner Party escapades.
Is his name Rey Mysterio?
I don't think Ray's that old, but...
I don't know.
Alright, well, what do you say we get into this?
Let's go. Let's dig into it. Wait. We gotta do introductions real quick. Who are you?
Oh, shit. I am Rey Mysterio.
You are Rey Mysterio, okay.
Yeah. I am actually Hew Perry of BooTv and now also BooTalk. Who the hell are you?
I am the great Mantor from early WWE fame. The Undertaker kicked my ass at one point. No, this is just Sean, WolfParty Martin. I was on last week, and I will be a continuous, persistent guest.
Yes. So back to what I was saying. We're going to be going off of a Wikipedia article, the most trustworthy source of all time.
Better than Google Answers.
Yeah. Ask Jeeves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now it's just ask.com.
Man, they killed Jeeves.
Jeeves, yeah, he's dead. Hopefully he wasn't eaten now.
Well, maybe. Donner Party.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll be going down that as just kind of like a guide. I have most of the information in my head, but it is kind of jumbled up. So if I tried to recite it from my head, I would probably mix it up.
Welcome to my world, man.
Mm-hmm. So I'll read it verbatim. We're going to start off with what do they label this as? It's just the beginning paragraph of the Wikipedia article. The Donner Party, or the Donner Reed Party, was a group of American pioneers who set out for California in a wagon trail in May 1846. They were delayed by a series of mishaps and mistakes and spent the winter of 1846 through 47 snowbound in the Sierra Nevada. Some of the pioneers resorted to cannibalism to survive. The journey west usually took between 4 and 6 months, but the Donner Party was slowed by following a new route called the Hastings Cutoff, which crossed Utah's what is that? How do you pronounce that?
Where is it pointed out to me, and I will fuck it up.
Utah's Wasatch.
Wasatch. It's it's kind of like Sasquatch. It's like Wasatch.
All right, Utah's Wasatch Mountains.
There you go.
And Great Salt Lake Desert. The rugged terrain and difficulties encountered while traveling along the this is more difficult.
Some more weird words.
Humboldt River.
Humboldt.
Yeah, I guess
there's an L and a U and a D in there.
Yeah, Humboldt River. In present-day Nevada, resulted in loss of many cattle and wagons and caused splits within the group. By the beginning of November 1846, the settlers had reached the Sierra Nevada, where they became trapped by an early heavy snowfall.
Snow in California?
Mm-hmm.
What the hell? Where are the beaches at?
I'm going to cut away from this because I'm having trouble reading because I guess I'm dyslexic. But I do know where they're getting at from this. This is just the very brief background.
Formalities.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they got cut off by the snow. Now, when they were in while they were taking the Hastings Cutoff, they were promised that this was going to be a vastly superior route to take to get to California. They were not told the right answers about that.
So they're just like YOLO, more or less. Fuck it.
Well, they were running low on time. They got delayed by a series of unfortunate events. I love that Netflix series.
Yes, that is cool. I like that. Count it off.
And so they opted to take the Hastings Cutoff as a gamble. They got to the mountain that they needed to cross. Past that mountain, they would have been clear sailing
Home free.
Yep, home free. They camped for the night, and it snowed in the night, and they were trapped.
And that's when they knew that they were fucked.
They missed getting to California by one day. Well, they were in California. I should rephrase that. They were in California. They were away from civilization.
Yeah.
They would have been home free.
Off in the cut.
Yeah. So, what do you think about that from just the beginning?
Well, I mean, shit, sometimes, we try to cut a little bit of time off of our travel sometimes, and before you know it, it's deliverance, and you are getting molested by Big Jim Bob, and maybe you're getting your ass cheeks eaten by his lovely sister wife, Henrietta.
They didn't start off with cannibalism, though. Well, let's wind it back, though, a little bit, because honestly, the main bulk of their horrific experience is in the camp with the cannibalism and everything like that. But there were others. There were other instances.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna rewind back.
I do sound effects sometimes.
I'm trying to find something in this. Yeah, screw it. I'll just go straight here. I'm gonna preface this by I don't know the timeline of this, so I might be wrong. But I think it was before they learned of the Hastings Cutoff that one of the family's elderly members died. Just natural causes.
Yeah, he was like 50, maybe.
So,
however long they lived back in those days,
so
they were pretty young.
They stopped and buried her and everything like that, and that was kind of the beginning of them getting backed up on their time frame. But we're at the Hastings Cutoff portion of the Wikipedia article. To promote his new route, Lansford W. Hastings sent riders to deliver letters to traveling immigrants. On July 12th, the Reeds and Donners were given one of these letters. Hastings warned the immigrants that they could expect opposition from the Mexican authorities in California and advised them, therefore, to band together in large groups. He also claimed to have worked out a new and better road to California, and said that he would be waiting at Fort Bridger to guide the immigrants along the new cutoff. Now, I'm gonna throw in my knowledge here again. I know when they got to Fort Bridger, he wasn't there.
Nope.
He said that he had to go further ahead and he'd meet them further ahead or something like that. Eventually they do meet up with him and have words. But every time they're like, hey, he'll be here and he'll help guide us, he's never there. This dude was a prick.
Very unreliable there, buddy.
Yeah. And on July 20th, at the Little Sandy River, most of the wagon train opted to follow the established trail via Fort Hall. A smaller group opted to head for Fort Bridger and needed a leader. Most of the younger males in the group were European immigrants and not considered to be ideal leaders. James F. Reed had been living in the U.S. for a considerable amount of time. He was older and had military experience, but his aristocrat. I'm gonna zoom in.
Who the hell wrote this shit with these words that are weird?
No, the words are just tiny, and I'm a terrible reader. Imperious. He was an aristocrat, imperious, and ostentatious. By comparison, the mature, experienced American-born Donners' peaceful and charitable nature made him the group's first choice. The members of the party were comfortably well off by contemporary standards. Although they are called pioneers, all but a few lack specific skills and experience, yada yada yada. Basically, they had elected for the head of the Donners family to lead. But Donner and Reed were kind of looked at as kind of the same level, so sometimes the Donner Party is called the Donner Reed.
Of aristocratical gentlemen.
Well, Reed was a bit more manly.
A rugged man with busheling chest hair.
Yes.
A robust voice.
Yes.
Like
he actually becomes the hero later on. So
there's a hero in all this?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, he's pretty much like if they made a film about Reed would be the superhero.
And he'd be played by Gerard Butler.
I don't know.
I'm trying to think of a manly sort of man. Hugh Jackman.
So we'll just kind of skip through a few of these because, again, we're in a Wikipedia article. They're going to tell us every little bit of everything, and some of it.
He had a mole on his butt. Formed a constellation of Orion's belt.
So let's get to James Reed's banishment.
Okay.
Along the Humboldt, the group met. Why are they so fucking hard to pronounce? Pate Native Americans, I believe.
Everything was hard to pronounce back then. It kind of had to be.
Yeah. Who joined them for a couple of days, but stole or shot several oxen and horses. By now, it was well into October, and the Donner families split off to make better time. 2 wagons in the remaining group became tangled, and John Snyder angrily beat the ox of Reed's hired teamster, Milt Elliott. When Reed intervened, Snyder turned the whip on him. Reed retaliated by fatally plunging a knife into Snyder's collarbone.
Well, that escalated quickly.
Yes.
Jesus Christ.
So, that evening, the witnesses gathered to discuss what was to be done. They didn't really have any government officials at this point in time. They're on the road to California. So, anything government-y was going to be done by the group themselves.
Yeah.
United States laws were not applicable west of the Continental Divide in what was then Mexican territory, and wagon trains often dispensed their own justice, as I've already said.
Frontier justice.
Mm-hmm. But George Donner, the party's leader, was a full day ahead of the main wagon train with his family. Snyder had been seen to hit James Reed, and some claimed that he had also hit Margaret Reed, his wife. But Snyder had been popular, and Reed was not.
Oh man! So he had more like friends on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was up.
Days.
He was up in like the couple thousands, and Reed was like he only had like 100.
Yeah. Facebook back then was just like somebody that was your friend or knew you just carved a message on a fucking oxen, and you'd be like, oh yeah, I like that.
Oh yeah, you're talking about MySpace, right?
Oh yeah. Definitely.
Louis Keseberg suggested that Reed should be hanged, but an eventful compromise allowed Reed to leave the camp without his family, who were to be taken care of by the others. Reed departed alone the next morning, unarmed, but his daughter Virginia rode ahead and secretly provided him with a rifle and food. Reed, in terms of American Murder Song, became what was known as the Banished Horseman. Whether or not he actually said these things, I don't know. Because the American Murder Song kind of embellished a lot of things about the Donner Party.
As they always seem to do.
Yeah. But they claimed that as Reed was banished, he had vowed that he would come back to help save people if need be.
Yeah.
I think that they definitely embellished that, because how would he know that they would get into some trouble? But later on, he does vow to save his family because they never show up.
Yeah.
So we get through that. They continue on. Basically, the rest of it is like, hey, it's that Hastings guy. He's a dick. We shouldn't trust him.
Fuck that guy.
Yeah, he put us on this path, and we're having difficulty getting through everything. Like there was a salt lake they had to cross. No, not a salt lake, but a salt desert that they had to cross. And they were promised it would take a couple days, I think. It took them like between 8 and 14 days to get past.
So it's kind of like Moses in the desert. They say it takes 40 years, but if you look it up on Google Maps, it only takes like fucking 5 days.
Yeah,
more or less.
Well, the opposite of that, because he was saying, yeah, it only takes like a couple minutes. And you're just sitting there like 2 days later, and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, it got so bad, like, they got halfway through the salt desert and said, like by the time that they thought them to themselves, hey, well, maybe we can turn around, they were too far.
Yeah.
Like they could not turn around. And
done goofed, buddy.
And then there was like a little shoddy trail that they had to go around. That like they barely got their oxen and wagons past, and they knew it would be like, I think this was right before the salt. Like they knew they could not go back at that point. They were stuck. There was either follow the Hastings path or sit and die.
Well, let's see. What are our choices here? Sit and die, follow the Hastings path. I'll just sit here and listen to the harmonious sounds of Phil Collins. Fuck it.
I thought you were about to say Bill Cosby for a second.
Oh, yeah. Put in Pop Rapist when we'll talk about that.
Okay. So, the Donner Pass. I'm skipping ahead again just because who has all day to sit here and read a Wikipedia article.
Yeah, it will tell you every single thing up to what they ate. And, oh, then this one guy farted, and they were like, "Hey, what'd you fart for?" And he was like, "I don't know."
And then he got stabbed, and then the guy got stabbed him, banished him. That was actually what happened.
Yeah. Most stories like this involve stabbing.
Yeah, they said
that involves hanging.
Him beating an ox was actually just like another way of saying he ripped a bad one.
Yeah. And also, beating an ox is what I describe myself as masturbating. What are you doing in there? My wife be like, "What are you doing in that bathroom?" First of all, I'm beating my ox. She's like, "Oh, okay."
I mean, it's a good way to get out of it.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah. Joke's on you. I am flogging a dolphin.
Just bring in some ox meat. Throw it on the grill. Hey, I told you I beat the ox.
As long as you just reference masturbation to some type of like beating of an animal, you can't go wrong.
Yeah, just
beating the ox, flogging the dolphin,
beating the chicken. Bring home some KFC.
Yep, choking the chicken. Yeah, 8 pieces.
All right, so
let's get back on track here.
The Donner Pass. Faced with one last push over mountains that were described as much worse than the Wasatch, the Ragtag Company had to decide whether to forge ahead or rest their cattle. It was October 20th, and they had been told that the pass would not be snowed in until the middle of November. William Pike was killed with a gun being loaded, whatever. This is badly worded at this point. He was killed by a gun. That's a run-on sentence. The Donners waited and traveled last, so everyone else went ahead. After a few miles of rough terrain, an axle broke on one of the Donners' wagons.
As it always does.
Oh.
Always.
It's like the Oregon Trail game.
I know, that's what I'm saying. This reminds me so much of the Oregon Trail. And somebody got dysentery and they got bit by a snake.
Jacob and George went into the woods to fashion a replacement. George Donner sliced his hand open while chiseling the wood, but it seemed a superficial wound.
Yeah, nope. Nope, not back in those days. You'd die from getting a cold.
Snow began to fall as they were trying to repair the wagon. The Breens made up the massive, nearly vertical slope, 1,000 feet, whatever, to Truckee Lake, now known as Donner Lake. 3 miles, 4.8 kilometers from the summit, and camped near a cabin that had been built 2 years earlier by another group of pioneers. The Eddies and Kesebergs joined the Breens, attempting to make it over the pass, but they found 5 to 10 foot drifts of snow and were unable to find the trail. They turned back for Truckee Lake. Within a day, all the families were camped there, except for the Donners, who were 5 miles below them, half a day's journey. Over the next few days, several more attempts were made to breach the pass with their wagons and animals, but all efforts failed.
Yes.
They were snowed in.
Classic case of shit going from bad to worse, to completely fucked.
Yes. So, this was the moment where, like, they were in bad shit. Like, they were just a days away. They were debating about whether or not they should push forward.
Yeah.
The wagon breaks down. They need to fix it. They camp out to try to fix it. It snows.
Yeah.
About a full month early. Because they said it was October 20th at the time. They said it wasn't supposed to snow till the middle of November.
So basically it's like the Kentuckian meteorologist.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's not going to snow 5 feet of snow.
Yeah. Or, it is going to snow, and then it feels like a summer day, and then tornadoes and hurricanes hit all at the same time, earthquakes go down. This place is a fucking apocalypse center.
Yeah, this is like the weirdest bunch of weather ever. We had frost this morning, and now it's like 65 degrees.
Yeah, you're in shorts right now.
I know. I wasn't this morning.
I wasn't either, but I'm in pajama pants now. I feel comfy.
Well, this is your home, man. If you want to wear fucking pajama pants, so be it.
That's what I do. I do me,
your
man.
kitty right now.
Oh, is that another euphemism?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Unless you have a vagina, I don't think you do.
I mean,
it's cool if you do.
Don't assume anything.
Okay.
So, now we move on to the main bulk of the Donner's story.
The juicy fucking thigh meat of the story.
The winter camp. So, I'm going to read quite a bit of this. This is very, very, very long.
Bear with us. Everybody get yourself a Fanta orange and get you some Cheetos.
Or pop some popcorn. Sit back. I don't know.
You open a nice fucking Sierra Nevada. Because, Sierra's in this story.
You know what? Actually, I'm going to get a beer. Because I'm going to need this.
Get me a beer too, would you son of a bitch?
You have one already?
No, it's gone.
Are you good with Corona?
I'm good with Corona. I don't digress. You better not be no Heineken bullshit.
I love me some Corona.
This is like a beer intermission. You got any limes? You want to do this upright?
I got some lemon juice. I haven't got no lime juice. So.
I don't give a fuck. I'm on bare bones, man. If you wanted to fucking butt chug this beer in front of me, I wouldn't say a word to you.
Well, if you watch the BooTv, I chug a beer at the end of it. So this is shitty.
It's 2018. Why do we have shit that isn't twist top?
I don't know, man. But I enjoy it. It makes me feel like a badass, especially when I pop them off on the show.
Yeah, open it up with your eye. My brother did that one time and cut his eyelid open and freaked everybody out in the bar.
Oh, there's the lemon juice. Use as needed.
Oh, yeah. Put this in my eyeballs.
Yeah. Alright, let me get a swig and then we're going into the winter camp. I just smacked my teeth, my fake teeth. Alright. 60 members and associates of the Breen, Graves, Reed, Murphy, Keseberg, and Eddy families set up for the winter at Truckee Lake. 3 widely separated cabins of pine logs served as their homes, with dirt floors and poorly constructed flat roofs that leaked when it rained.
So this wasn't a Motel 6?
No,
not
in the slightest. The Breens occupied one cabin, the Eddys and the Murphys another, and Reeds and Graves the third. Keseberg built a lean-to for his family against the side of the Breen cabin. The families used canvas or oxhide to patch the faulty roofs. The cabins had no windows or doors, only large holes to allow entry of the... what?
Poorly written.
Yeah, very poorly written.
We have to emphasize that.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm getting it now. Only to allow entry of the 60 people at Truckee Lake. It only says of the 60, and it's like, what the fuck does that mean? Of the 60 people at Truckee Lake, 19 men over 18, 12 were women, and 29 were children, 6 of whom were toddlers or younger.
Oh, Jesus Christ, this is like the Great Wolf Lodge.
Mm-hmm. And I believe it took them about 6 months to get to this point. So if you have like a young kid, they probably were born like right as you were about to leave, or they were born on the trail.
Yeah.
Farther down the trail, close to Alder Creek, the Donner families hastily constructed tents to house 21 people, including Mrs. Wolfinger, her child, and the Donner's drivers, 6 men, 3 women, and 12 children in all. It began to snow again on the evening of November 4th, the beginning of a storm that lasted 8 days.
Well, damn.
By the time the party made camp, very little food remained from the supplies that Stanton had brought back from Sutter's Fort. I forgot to mention, they sent some people ahead to get supplies and then came back.
Did they go to Wally World?
Basically.
Yeah.
I mean, they just went to Sutter's Fort and they were like, hey, we need some supplies, bro.
Frontier Wally World.
So, the oxen began to die, and their carcasses were frozen and stacked. Truckee Lake was not yet frozen, but the pioneers were unfamiliar with catching lake trout. Eddy, the most experienced hunter, killed a bear. But he had a little luck after that. The Reed and Eddy families had lost almost everything, and Margaret Reed promised to pay double when they got to California for the use of 3 oxen from the Graves and Breen families. Graves charged Eddy $25, normally the cost of 2 healthy oxen, for the carcass of an ox that had starved to death. So, I want to take this moment to go ahead and say, I know I'm reading through this pretty much verbatim at this point, and earlier we were like, skip the details. At this point, I feel like the details are necessary.
This is all going to culminate.
Yes, because at this point they have no more supplies. They're eating their oxen. Mm-hmm. So, this is showing you the progression that's going to get them into what they become.
They are at the beginning of Shit Creek pretty much more or less, and they are losing their oars.
Oh, yes. Desperation grew in camp, and some reasoned that individuals might succeed in navigating the pass where the wagons could not. On November 12th, the storm abated, and a small party tried to reach the summit on foot, but found the trek through the soft, deep powder too difficult, and returned that same evening. Over the next week, 2 more attempts were made by other small parties, but both quickly failed. On November 21st, a large party of about 22 people made an attempt and successfully reached the peak. The party traveled about 1.5 miles west of the summit, but this trip too was aborted, and they returned to the lake on November 23rd. Patrick Breen began keeping a diary on November 22nd. November 20th. Kept a diary on November 20th. He primarily concerned himself with the weather, marking the storms and how much snow had fallen, but gradually began to include references to God and religion in his entries. Life at Truckee Lake was miserable. The cabins were cramped and filthy, and it snowed so much that people were unable to go outdoors for days. Diets soon consisted of oxhide strips, of which were boiled to make a disagreeable glue-like jelly.
So it sounds like modern-day North Dakota.
Yeah, pretty much. Ox and horse bones were boiled repeatedly to make soup.
Oh yeah, the ox bone soup is better than Progresso.
Oh man, I want some. I wonder if Walmart has that.
Ox bone soup? Yeah, I think so.
Walmart has
Aldi's.
Walmart has everything. They became so brittle they would crumble upon chewing. Sometimes they were softened by being charred and eaten. Bit by bit, the Murphy children picked apart the oxhide rug that laid in front of their fireplace and roasted it in the fire and ate that. After the departure of the snowshoe party, 2/3 of the immigrants at Truckee Lake were children. Mrs. Graves was in charge of 8, and Lavinia Murphy and Eleanor Eddy together took care of 9. Immigrants caught and ate mice that strayed into their cabins. Many of the people at Truckee Lake were soon weakened and spent most of their time in bed. Occasionally, one would be able to make the full-day trek to see the Donners. News came that Jacob Donner and 3 hired men had died. One of them, Joseph Reinhard, confessed on his deathbed that he murdered Wolfinger. George Donner's hand had become infected, which left 4 men to work at the Donner camp.
And that's where they got the idea for Evil Dead.
Margaret Reed had managed to save enough food for a Christmas pot of soup. To the delight of her children, by January, they were facing starvation and considered eating the oxides that served as their roof.
Considered? I don't think I would consider it this point. That shit would be gone. I'd be the fat dude in the corner, and I'd be like, what? What are you looking for?
You're the guy that when you get stranded looks over and everyone's like, we need to find some food, and then you look over and you hear a little crinkle of a wrapper, and you've got a Snickers bar.
What are you looking at me for? I don't know. This is deer poop.
Alright, Margaret Reed, Virginia, Milt Elliott, and the servant girl, Eliza Williams, attempted to walk out, reasoning that it would be better to try to bring food back than sit and watch the children starve. They were gone for 4 days, and in the snow before they had to turn back. Their cabin was now uninhabitable. The oxhide roof served as their food supply, and the family moved in with the Breens. The servants went to live with other families. One day the Graves came by to collect on the debt owed by the Reeds, and took the oxhides, all that the family had to eat.
So they ate their damn roofs.
They ate their roofs.
Jesus, you ever been in such dire straits you just eat your home furnishings?
I was thinking about this as I was reading it, though. The one thing that I don't think I would have ended up doing was thinking to eat the roof. Like, knowing where this is going to end up, I feel like I would have jumped to trying to eat people before I ate my roof.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that is true. Just pick off the most annoying person. Pick off the guy that's always telling horrible jokes and farting all the time.
You just got that guy in the back of the camp just going,
Hey, the guy walks into a bar. Well, I forgot the rest of this joke, but
then they get snowed into a camp.
Okay, we gotta eat fucking Billy back here. He's an annoying asshole.
You got a lot of meat on him, too.
Oh, yeah, I'll kick his bones.
So the next section is called The Forlorn Hope. The mountain party at Truckee Lake began to fail. Spitzer died. Then Bayless Williams, a driver for the Reeds. More from malnutrition than starvation. Franklin Graves fashioned 14 pairs of snowshoes out of oxbows and hides. A party of 17 men, women, and children set out on foot in an attempt to cross the mountain pass. As evidence of how grim their choices were, 4 of the men were fathers and 3 of the women mothers, who gave their young children to other women to take care of them. They packed lightly, taking what had become 6 days' rations, a rifle, a blanket each, a hatchet, and some pistols, hoping to make their way to Bear Valley. Historian Charles McGlishan later called this snowshoe party the Forlorn Hope.
I don't think hope is the right word to use for this story at all. There is no hope.
Well, I mean, they have a lot of hope trying to get out of this.
Well,
I guess.
as they say, hope in one hand and then shit in your mouth with the other.
Well, that's kind of what they did. Kind of. Two of those without snowshoes, Charles Berger and 10-year-old William Murphy. Why the 10-year-old without a snowshoe? Turned back early on. Other members of the party fashioned a pair of snowshoes for Lemuel on the first evening.
Lemuel?
Lemuel.
I'm Lemuel.
My name's Lemuel.
I'm Lemuel.
Oh man, we're gonna be haunted as shit after this.
Oh well. Haunted by cannibal people, maybe. Lemuel.
On the first evening, from one of their back saddles that they were carrying, the snowshoes proved to be awkward but effective on the arduous climb. The members of the party were neither well-nourished nor accustomed to camping in snow 12 feet deep, and by the third day, most were snowblind. On the sixth day, Eddie discovered that his wife had hidden a half-pound of bear meat in his pack. The group set out again the morning of December 21st. Stanton had been straggling for several days, and he remained behind, saying that he would follow shortly. His remains were found in that location the following year.
Well, damn it, if he would just let people know that he was going to die, they could have eaten, and then, the Forlorn Hope would have made more sense.
I don't think they actually had the idea for that kind of stuff yet, but that's coming. That's coming soon. Very soon. I actually think it is the Forlorn Hope that started.
Was it the Forlorn Hope? It also is a forgotten Star Wars movie that they scrapped. There was the New Hope, and then there was the Forlorn Hope.
Oh yeah, that's episode 4.5.
Yeah, that's the special edition.
Yeah. George Lucas, just like everyone, is replaced with Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah. Indiana Jones is in there somewhere too.
Yeah. Alright, the group became lost and confused after 2 more days without food. Patrick Dolan proposed that one of them should volunteer to die in order to feed the others.
I volunteer to die!
I volunteer as tribute.
That sounds like Bane just now. I volunteer to die.
Some suggested a duel, while another account describes an attempt to create a lottery to choose a member to sacrifice. Eddie suggested that they keep moving until someone simply fell, but a blizzard forced the group to halt. Antonio, the animal handler, was the first to die. Franklin Graves was the next casualty. As the blizzard progressed, Patrick Dolan began to rant deliriously. Stripped off his clothes and ran into the woods. He returned shortly afterwards and died a few hours later. Not long after, possibly because 12-year-old Lemuel Murphy was near death, some of the group began to eat flesh from Dolan's body.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
Lemuel's sister tried to feed some to her brother, but he died shortly afterwards. Eddie, Salvador, and Louis refused to eat. The next morning, the group stripped the muscle and organs from the bodies of Antonio, Dolan, Graves, and Murphy and dried it to store it for the days ahead, taking care to ensure that nobody would have to eat his or her relatives.
What part of the body would be most appetizing to you, do you think?
Oh, man.
I've heard the butt meat is the best part. It's like a nice roast.
I mean, as long as they're not like one of those skinny ass people, I feel like the butt meat would be okay.
Yeah, and if they're jerky in it, like you said they were, I mean, it could be very delicious.
Yeah.
Jerky in any type of context, no matter what it comes from, would still be more appetizing than just pulsating, warm human meat.
Man, I need some butt jerky now.
Yeah, man. We'll go up to the Speedway. I'll get you some butt jerky. I got the Speedway card, and I get a half price.
All right. So where was I?
They're eating people.
Yeah.
Lemuel, no.
There I was. After 3 days' rest, they set off again, searching for the trail. Eddie eventually succumbed to his hunger and ate human flesh, but that was soon gone. They began to take apart their snowshoes to eat the oxhide webbing and discussed killing Louis and Salvador for food, before Eddie warned the two men and they quietly left. Jay Fosdick, that's a very unfortunate Fosdick died during the night, leaving only 7 members of the party. Eddie and Mary Graves left to hunt, but when they returned with deer meat, Fosdick's body had already been cut apart for food. After several more days, 25 since they had left Truckee Lake, they came across Salvador and Louis, who had not eaten for about 9 days and were close to death. William Foster shot the pair, believing that their flesh was the group's last hope of avoiding imminent death from starvation.
So they got this bear meat, they got this deer meat, and then they're still, I guess, resorting to
Cannibalism.
Cannibalism.
I guess, in the grand scheme of things, it's like, let's stock up on as much as we possibly can, because we haven't had anything.
I'm tired of eating my shoes. I already ate this rug and this fucking roof.
On January 12th, the group stumbled into Miwok Camp. Looking so deteriorated that the camp's inhabitants initially fled. The Miwoks gave them what they had to eat: acorns, grass, and pine nuts. After a few days, Eddie continued on with the help of a Miwok to a ranch.
Is that like an Ewok?
Yeah, a Miwok.
Ancient ancestors of Ewoks. Eat them.
He took him to a ranch in a small farming community at the edge of the Sacramento Valley. A hurriedly assembled rescue party found the other 6 survivors on January 17th. Their journey from Truckee Lake had taken 33 days.
We've got a Gilligan's Island scenario here.
Yes.
It was only supposed to take a few days. Wrong. It took a month and some change.
Well, realistically, if they didn't get stopped by the snow, what would have happened was they would have got hit with the snow, but it wouldn't have taken them long to continue on. Like, the snow would have sucked. It would have been cold as shit, but they would have been able to push through and make it to their destination.
Yes, and this was before the modern conveniences we have today of North Face jackets and Columbia jackets.
Yeah, they were, they were eating their jackets.
Mm-hmm. They were eating their roofs, their jackets, their shoes, anything. Probably even their ox underwear.
Yeah.
That's where edible panties came from.
Now, you want to hear about Reed again?
Okay, what's up with Reed?
Reed is attempting a rescue. Now, Reed got sent ahead when he was banished and made it all the way to California, Sacramento, I believe. And when a lot of time passed and nobody from his party showed up, especially from his family, he began to worry and went to the leaders of the town that he was in and was asking to form a rescue party. They denied him because they were at war with Mexico for territory. As soon as the war over territory ended and Mexico was drawn out, they finally authorized rescue parties. Reed was heading most of them. Or not most of them, some of them. So, Reed attempts a rescue. James F. Reed made it out of the Sierra Nevada to Rancho Johnson in late October. He was safe and recovering at Sutter's Fort, but each day he became more and more concerned for the fate of his family and friends. He pleaded with Colonel John C. Fremont to gather a team of men to cross the pass and help the company, in return for which Reed promised that he would join Fremont's forces and fight in the Mexican-American War. Reed was joined by McCutcheon, who had been unable to return with Stanton, as well as some members of the Harlan Young Party.
I thought you were going to say the Harlem Globetrotters.
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, they've been around a while.
They made basketballs out of oxen back then.
Hello. Hello, friend. We are talking about murderous cannibals.
I like your pants.
I love my pants. Take a seat at the table of cannibalism. We just got ambushed, Sean.
We got ambushed?
We got ambushed.
Who we got ambushed by?
I don't know. Who the fuck are you?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Who's this bearded fellow over here?
Yeah, 3 bearded fellows sitting at a table talking about cannibalism.
If we do the fusion dance, we become Rasputin.
This sounds like a porn. I'm digging this.
You want to introduce yourself?
I'm Dylan Close. A lot of people hate me. That's okay.
We're kind of far right now,
wait.
so you're doing far.
Wait,
Oh, am I?
but I thought you was Grim.
Well, AKA Mr. Grimm.
Well, let me
From
give
one episode.
that hasn't even released yet at the time of this recording. So let me catch you up to speed a little bit right now. We're talking about the Donner Party. This is a group of people who were immigrating to California. Kind of like the Oregon Trail, if you ever played that game.
It's a lot like the Oregon Trail.
But they took a cutoff that was promised to be a lot faster of a route. It wasn't. They got this close to getting out. They got to a mountain. If they had passed that mountain, it would have been smooth sailing through the rest of California. They were in California, but they had to get to Sacramento, I believe. Would have been smooth sailing. One of their wagons broke down, and they had to sit and repair it, so they just opted to camp for the night and then repair the wagon and continue on. They camped for that night, and it snowed, and they could not pass through the snow on the mountain, and they couldn't turn back.
It's like one of those freemium games, pretty much, on your phone. You gotta wait a little bit until the shit repairs, or you can pay a certain amount of money and just get that shit fixed right there.
I hate them games.
That's how they get you
That's
every
how
time.
they get you for real.
So
It's
then-
free games, and then you're addicted.
So then, this group of people called the Forlorn Hope went out trying to escape, basically. People started dying, they started eating people, they started electing to kill each other, to eat each other, to keep other people alive. And now we're at the point where a man who was banished from the party and made it to Sacramento was banished because he murdered a man. And he's about to try to rescue everyone who is trapped at this lake. So, where we left off, we were talking about the Harlan
Harlem Globetrotters.
Yep, the Harlan Young Party. The Harlan Young wagon train had arrived at Sutter's Fort. Also, by the way, this is very poorly written, so I'm going to stutter a lot.
Whoever wrote this was fucking on peyote or something.
Man, I'll tell you what, I don't know what I'm on, but I almost drank this mean green bottle sitting here and not my strawberry Fanta.
Ugh.
It would taste very different, I think.
Hopefully I would have realized before, they initially had it.
Okay, so the Harlan Young wagon train had arrived at Sutter's Fort on October 8th, the last to make it over the Sierra Nevada that season. The party of roughly 30 horses and a dozen men carried food supplies and expected to find the Donner Party on the western side of the mountain along the Bear River below the steep approach to Immigrant Gap.
Something tells me one of those horses are going to get eaten. Or maybe 3 or 4 of them.
Perhaps starving but alive. When they arrived in the river valley, they found only a pioneer couple, immigrants who had been separated from their company and were near starvation. Two guys.
Boning hard to keep warm. They're just fucking in the snow, just melting shit.
Near.
No lube.
Just none.
Oxen blood.
That's why they were boiling the oxen. Two guides deserted Reed and McCutcheon with some of their horses, but they pressed on farther up the valley to Yuba Bottoms.
Yuba Bottoms. That's my favorite porn star.
Why do I feel like we're in an episode of Game of Thrones?
That's basically what we're in right now. Walking the last mile on foot, Reed and McCutcheon's stood looking up at Immigrant Gap, only 12 miles from the top, blocked by snow, possibly on the same day that the Breens attempted to lead one last effort to crest the pass from the east. Despondent, they turned back to Sutter's Fort. Now, I will go ahead and use the rest of my internal knowledge to just get us through the rest of this, because there's just going to be a lot of details that we don't really need to get through.
Yeah, I don't need to know.
Yeah.
What size shoe do they have?
Yeah, I know.
They ate their shoes.
It was awkward.
Nice. Nice.
So, from there...
This childproof?
Yeah. From there, Reed did get some relief parties. Reed wasn't in all of them. The relief parties would only be able to take a couple people at a time. So they weren't able to get there and get everyone out. It was, hey...
How many was it?
There are 80 people in this party.
There's a whole lot of numbers being introduced.
80 people went in, got trapped in by this lake. 40 people lived.
Jesus, mathematics, that's like mathematics.
But
I've been up too long to math.
Fractions.
me too, man.
Carry
This
the
is
one.
You're looking
by
real
3.
tasty right now. And I don't mean that in the cannibalism
How
way.
many butts were eaten?
It's probably
Butts
a
and
lot.
nuts.
Eat that shitter like an apple fritter.
But from there,
The bottoms.
they were slowly getting more and more people out of the camp. Basically, a relief party would show up and they would say, all right, any able-bodied people want to join? Get your ass up. Come on, let's go. And if you were too weak to get up, then you laid there until another relief party came. And they would lead them back out of the camp. Eventually, the Reed children went on with the relief parties, and Reed was coming with his relief party to get more people. They crossed paths, and he finally saw his children. Yeah. So he got a good feel-good moment.
He's like, boy! It's like Kratos. Boy!
What you been eating, boy?
Boy!
I believe the Reeds didn't eat any people, actually.
Oh, really?
They
kept it real?
Yeah, they tried not to eat anybody. So
I would have eaten like 15 people by now.
man,
I'm ashamed to say
I
that.
would have been a serial eater.
Yeah, every person
Everybody
that
up
came in
there.
there would have just been eaten.
Everybody up there ate human. I don't care what they say. They
Well,
ate it.
but we eventually boiled down the 80 people to 2. There were, 3. 3 people left. Everyone else was either dead and eaten, or saved. There are 3 people left. It was Tamsin Donner, I believe was her name. George Donner, the guy who got his hand cut while trying to fix the wagon and is now infected and dying. And Louis Keysburg. Louis Keysburg was not a very well-liked man. He was a dick.
Yeah, he was the Kanye West of the group, probably.
So nobody knows why Keysburg opted to stay. Because again, you had the choice to stay or go with the relief party. He opted to stay. Tamsin Donner said she was staying and sent her children with the relief party because George was dying and she wouldn't leave her husband alone. She knew it was gonna cost her life, but she opted to stay with her husband on his deathbed. When the next relief party showed up, Tamsin Donner was gone. George was dead. And Louis Keysburg was the only one alive. He eventually admitted to eating Tamsin Donner. Whether or not he killed her and ate her, nobody really knows. When he was sent back with the relief group and rejoined civilization, he was the only one out of the Donner Party that would openly talk about eating people, which gave him the reputation of being a cannibal, and which he was technically, but being a cannibal who enjoyed eating people. So there was this big defamation lawsuit he even did. Yeah. He won $1.
Oh,
yeah, a full $1.
A dollar back then was roughly $50 today, probably.
Probably, yeah. But he got $1 for a defamation lawsuit. But he still, like, even to this day, can't shake the idea that he was the quote unquote devil in camp who would kill and eat people.
And that harkens back to Ravenous that I spoke of earlier. There's one guy that they pretty much, I'll give you the summary of the movie real quick. They find a guy that's weak and weary out on the trail. They're in a fort. They bring him back in, and he is basically a ravenous fucking cannibal, and he eats like half the camp pretty much. So watch that. It has a lot of elements of the Donner Party in it.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
And I've seen this from a couple different sources, so I believe that it is true. Mm-hmm. But the funniest part about this to me is later on when the gold rush happened, Louis Keseberg went to find some gold.
Dude, I would not ever venture out into the wilderness ever again after that.
But Louis Keseberg needed to get him some gold.
Gold, goddamn it. He just a new pair of shoes.
No, he didn't just get a new pair of shoes with them gold. He opened himself a restaurant.
Goddamn. Was it people meat?
Yes.
Bandwiches.
Literally.
But
you want some chicken fingers?
With some fucking fingers.
Then there was also later on in his life, one of the Donner children had a conversation with Keseberg, and he reportedly broke down and cried in front of her and said that he didn't kill her mom, but he did eat her. He did admit that. He said, "I ate her. I didn't kill her though.
I ate her liver."
And he begged.
I just cut her up, cooked her.
Yeah, and he begged for the Donner's forgiveness, which she gave.
I just seasoned her with some Lowry seasoned salt.
Oh, you should have had it.
Oh, you ate my mama, but I still love you.
It was delicious. It tasted like Golden Corral steak.
$30 of nothing.
I mean, I guess you could just eat a bunch of Golden Corral. I'm gonna go to Golden Corral and ask for some butt jerky.
Yeah, some butt meat, please.
You had dinner yet?
Now, we haven't asked you this. I don't believe he was asking me if you were faced with the opportunity to eat somebody. Which part of somebody would you think would be the most tasty?
The dick meat.
I don't know about the dick.
The labia.
Depends on how big the dick is, I guess.
We came to the conclusion together that butt meat would probably be pretty good, especially if you got a fat ass.
Yeah, you got a big old booty. You got like a fucking like Yucca Bottoms or whatever her name was. She got a big old booty.
I don't know. What about it? A lot of people like chicken gizzards.
Yeah.
You go for the gizzard.
Chicken fry that shit, man. You chicken fry anything, it's probably pretty good.
Man, at work, you can deep fry anything, so...
That's true. You get some deep fried Oreos, deep fried pickles, deep fried dick.
I think it would be all bristly, I think. It would be like hard to bite into. It would resemble like a nice bratwurst, but it would just have a bristly type of...
It wouldn't have that snap as a bratwurst.
I mean, it would if you snapped it off, like it was a fucking celery stick, but...
But yeah, what do you guys think of the tale of the Donner Party?
I mean, I would, like I said, if I was in that situation, I would just beat people left and right.
Oh yeah, nobody would be left.
If I was going through starvation and crazy, that would just completely fuel my homicidal cannibalism.
Now,
especially if I was the biggest person there and everybody else was weak.
Yeah.
Now, but
come here, boy.
But tell me this, and you probably can answer this best, Dylan. Would your situation change considering if you had children with you?
Are they my children?
Yes.
He gonna be eating human too.
But that's what I'm saying. Would you Because some of the people on this party looked at their children and said, "I'm gonna eat you," or they said, "I'm gonna feed you people."
Oh no, I would die before I'd eat him. Oh
Yes.
yeah, I'd die in a heartbeat.
So you'd feed yourself to your son. Which
excuses.
I'm not blaming you for that. I'm just saying.
Remember that one time you didn't make your bed?
No, it's
Eat
scary,
you.
dude. This little kid was born on Halloween. He might eat me. It's not, I'm like, Dad, it's time.
So would you eat the child, or would you starve a little bit yourself just to feed the child?
Starve myself until I'm completely delirious and they look like an old Looney Tunes cartoon where they turn into ham, so I'm looking at them. And I don't know from there. Who's to say? I probably would.
Fate will
I
decide.
guess you can hike through the mountains and find some mushrooms somewhere.
I mean, there was a guy in there that killed a bear, but he couldn't fish for fish.
Oh yeah.
If you kill a bear, you can fucking do anything, man.
Yeah, they couldn't figure out how to fish in the lake because it was frozen over, but he went out and killed a bear.
Yeah. I don't get it, man.
What? What did he kill the bear with? His dick.
They had
He dropped it on his head.
they had ammunition.
Well,
So-
he had a gun. He could have.
They didn't have bullets back then. They had kidney stones. Just as well.
Hey, I mean, you're ripping
Should've-
people apart already. That's free
Yeah, kidney
ammunition.
stones.
too.
That's ammo right there.
They should have fought that bear like Leo.
Bear fuckers.
Wrestle him to the ground.
Beat his ass.
For some reason, I was thinking of Super Troopers, where the dude's like, "Woohoo! Yeah, get it!" It's like, "Hey, bear fucker."
But yeah, that is what I've been obsessing over for the past few months. I've
Very
watched-
interesting story. I mean, if you grew up fucked up like I did and was told all types of weird stories, you've probably heard of the Donner Party.
Yeah.
But if you're one of these damn millennials,
I didn't.
these snowflakes, you probably never heard of it.
I didn't hear about it until American Murder Song, and then that's what got me interested in it. I started watching a bunch of documentaries on it.
I obviously didn't know the full rundown of Wikipedia. I didn't know people's names, and I was just like, "Oh, this is frontier people. They ate."
Yeah, they were put in a group of 80 so that they could try to go against Mexicans if they ran across Mexicans. Then that 80 people became 40.
It's the fearsome Mexican. I bet they wish they did run across some Mexicans. So
But they did.
There would have probably been more than 80 of them.
They just all show up in a van. They're like, "Hey, hombre, what you doing out here?"
They show up in a Dodge Neon or some shit. Back then, it'd be like a.
I bet they'd have ate them all.
Oh yeah.
Make some tacos. This is getting real racist real fast.
Oh,
Should we close this out?
Well, we are in Kentucky, so.
All right, I'm opting to close this out before we get some racist
Before we get
lawsuits.
Donald Trump's endorsement.
So,
I hate white people.
with all that said, stay spooky, my friends.
Eat some butt meat.
When?
Now.
Oh shit.
I'm Sean WolfParty Martin. Who are you?
Dylan Close, guys.
All right.
He's so close.
Initiate fear chud sequence.